turned 40 this year, and I live in LA, which is a great life choice for me to be a 40-year-old woman living in Los Angeles, you guys. It's so great. I imagine it's pretty similar to how a 40-year-old gymnast feels living in Romania. You know, like, we used to be worth something to our societies, but now they don't know what to do with us. They just don't know what we're worth anymore. Yeah, so I am 40. People ask, like, what's it like to be 40? And I'm like, well, I'm old enough, I've had to color my hair for some time, but I'm not so old that when I sneeze, I piss myself. It's kind of the sweet spot of being a woman, if you ask me. It's weird being like an older woman because you don't know if people still find you attractive. Like, I was walking down the street the other day and I got catcalled by these guys in a car, and I was really confused because I didn't know if I was being sexually harassed or mocked by teens who didn't respect their elder. Could have been either, I don't know. I get it though, I don't really dress like I'm 40, I dress like a high schooler who only uses her body to play lacrosse. So it can be confusing to people. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to have more blazers than I do, which is 0. I think I'm just supposed to look like the one female detective on a Dick Wolf show and call it a day. That's what I think I'm supposed to look like, you know? Yeah, those women, sharp. They are so sharp. One thing that's nice about being a 40-year-old woman, though, is that people finally stop asking you when you're gonna have kids. Because it's kind of like a Russian roulette genetic situation going forward at this point, so they just leave it alone. But I made a conscious choice like a long time ago not to have kids, so like it's definitely a relief now that people stop asking me. But for some reason, I feel this compulsion to tell other people I'm really jazzed about their choice to have children. And I don't do that with anything else. It's not like I go up to people who just bought a PT Cruiser and say, way to go on that PT Cruiser. Like, that would be insane. I'm from Kentucky, which is like the PT Cruiser of states, in case you're wondering. Yeah, Kentucky. I know I don't sound like I'm from Kentucky, I just sound like you're gonna get in trouble. But I did a couple weeks ago get a tooth pulled because it had gone bad. So the scales, you know, that's pretty Kentucky, you guys. That's pretty Kentucky. Fun fact about Kentucky, our state flag is the graphic tee. Yeah, very popular down there. One of the most popular graphic tees in Kentucky are Second Amendment t-shirts, pro, in case you were confused. Wouldn't that be fun though, if there was like an like, take my gun, please? That would be hilarious to me. But the thing that I find really interesting is I feel like there's an untapped market for t-shirts for other amendments. Wouldn't that be fun if other amendments got their own t-shirts? Like, I want to see a t-shirt for the 9th Amendment. Because all the 9th Amendment is just rights not enumerated in the Constitution. So what happened was our founding fathers were writing, got tired, and put an etc. on the Bill of Rights. That's kind of funny, you guys. Right? Something about being a woman when you grow up in the South, you're raised to be super polite, which can be a problem because you don't know how to like get yourself out of uncomfortable situations or tell people to go away. When I was 16 years old, I was like hanging out in the Kroger, you know, like 16-year-olds do, and I was approached by a hot teen, and I didn't know what to do. And he cornered me in the snack pack aisle and talked to me for 45 minutes. And I left that interaction having bought 5 magazine subscriptions from him. And I paid him with a personal check, in case you were wondering the kind of 16-year-old I was. And let's be honest, that scans, right? Like, I still carry around a checkbook. That's the kind of woman I look like. I also look like I ate at a Panera a couple times a week, which is also true. It's great. Yeah, that's the kind of woman I am. But if I'm like completely honest, one of the reasons I bought those magazine subscriptions from him was because he looked like Jordan Catalano from My So-Called Life. Yeah. Does anybody remember? Yes, thank you. You remember Jared Leto in his first role? Yeah. Something kind of interesting is I'm part of a very small generation that's sandwiched between Gen X and millennials, and sometimes they call us the Catalano generation. which is a fucking stupid name, right? It's so dumb. Like, millennials isn't great, but I get it, because they're like saddled with 1,000 years worth of environmental disaster and student debt that they have to crawl their way out of, right? And we're named after a fuckboy who couldn't read. That's our legacy. Something about being a 40-year-old woman, I'm never going to exceed my parents' expectations, you know? Even if like this really takes off, it's just gonna be about time. My mom is really supportive though. The one thing I think she really wants though is I think she really wants me to get married. She doesn't say it out loud because she knows how wishes work. But I know she does. And I'm probably gonna get married. I've been with my boyfriend a very long time and we've talked about it. It's gonna happen. And mostly it's because I don't really have an interest in dating anymore. Because I think at my age, dating is just gonna be a series of men trying to explain jazz to me. And that sounds terrible. Like, I don't have the time for that. My dad, he's like way more aggressive in his campaign to try to get me hitched. Like years ago when I was single, he was like trying to be really helpful and he's like, Liz, great idea. I think you should date a scientist. I'm like, cool. I don't know any scientists. He's like, that's okay. You can go to a science fair. Because that's where he thinks scientists live, I guess. I don't know. My dad, he does really like my boyfriend, and so he's trying to different machinations to try to get him to propose at this point. Right now, he's in the bribery stage. He's offering like financial incentives. Fun fact about my dad, he only gives monetary gifts because he wants you to know what you are worth to him. Right now, my boyfriend is currently worth an $150 gift card to Williams-Sonoma. However, he has told him that if we get married, that on holidays and birthdays, he will get $600 in cash. That's cool info for me to know because now that means my dowry is $450. So glad I know that piece of information. My dad's a weird dude, obviously. His two favorite things in the world are eating at Irish pubs and dramatically cutting people out of his life forever. It's the latter reason that he moved to the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, because it makes sense. Because it's the perfect place for old white people to go when they love turquoise but hate Florida. That should be their state campaign, honestly. I think it should be. One thing he really likes to brag about being in the middle of nowhere is he's like, Liz, it doesn't matter. I could go out of town for weeks and I never have to lock my door. And I'm like, cool brag, Dad, cool. If this is how we're playing it, I live in a place where 3 of my cats haven't been carried off by owls. So I think I won that argument. My dad, he comes from like a really big family. His mom was one of 15 kids. Yeah. That's a lot of PT Cruisers, you guys. That's a lot. All of her family photos just look like stills from a Ken Burns documentary about the Dust Bowl. Yeah, but it was okay because like back then there were a lot of like big families and like they didn't have a lot of money and that was fine. You could be poor and have a ton of kids. Nowadays, you don't buy your kid an iPhone, you're a shitty parent. Back then, your kid lost an arm in a thresher and it was God's plan. Speaking of iPhones, I didn't get my first cell phone until I was 21. I also didn't lose my virginity till I was 21, and the phone thing is way more embarrassing. Super embarrassing. I remember when my family got the internet. It's kind of like saying I was a field nurse in the Civil War at this point in time. But I do, it was one of those AOL CD-ROM discs, you remember that? Where you like, it was like a dial-up kind of situation. So the thing with that, if you guys remember, was those AOL discs came with a single email address, one. So my family of 5, for years, shared a single email address. And if you want to know what that was like, it was kind of like when all those grandparents lived in one bed in Willy Wonka, just all up in each other's business, very intimate. You guys,